And so he's gone. He is gone. Aaron Rodgers is gone, although in his farewell message to the Green Bay Packers and their faithful, he said, "Oh, this isn't forever. I'll be back again." There was an ominous little tone to what Aaron Rodgers was talking about. Although I will say this, I know a lot of people have been going out there. We've been celebrating that Aaron Rodgers is finally gone. He's finally out of the division. But the whole thing, and this is the thing that sprung to me the other night, last night, I should say, is that Aaron Rodgers is gone. And yet the year that we finally make it back to the Super Bowl, there's about 100% chance that we play the Jets with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback. It's a matter of fact. It's going to happen. So let's prepare ourselves for that. But in the immediacy, Aaron Rodgers is no longer here with the Green Bay Packers, and I can't wait to talk about it. So, Sammy, let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown!
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Tuesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. Great show tonight. We are days, no hours away from the NFL draft. All these mock drafts, all this stuff is going to go away here in a matter of hours. And we will see you this Thursday night. Rip Beer Company in Huntington Beach, PCH location. We'll be hosting a little Bears draft party for anybody in the Southern California area want to hang out. We'll be doing some live hits from there. We will be doing it, of course, for the Sick Podcast. We'll join the Tape Never Lies, do some other things, probably do some whatever the kids do, TikToks, all that good stuff. So Grip Beer Company, Huntington Beach, PCH location. As for tonight's show, we're going to be joined by the NFL Network's Cynthia Frelund, who is going to be talking to us about some of the biggest stories of the draft, including the latest news on Jalen Carter and Will Levis, who is telling his friends and family that he is going to be the first overall pick in the draft, which is amazing. It feels like the Panthers would be playing 3D chess in an effort to tank this season to be able to grab Caleb Williams. The only problem is the Bears have that pick. So please, Carolina, draft Will Levis. That can't help but work out well. Whatever we can do to get Will Levis to Carolina, the Bears need to make that happen, because then we will be picking first overall next season. It'll be pretty good. But in any event, joining us right now, as she does every Tuesday, from FoxSports.com, and more importantly, the Sick Podcast, it's Carmen Vitali. Carmen, how are you living?
I'm great. I'm back in Chicago. We're ready for the draft.
Back in Chicago. What is the pulse of the city right now in the wake of the Aaron Rodgers, not retirement, but being moved to New York? Is it the talk of the town, or does nobody care?
Oh no, everybody cares. Everybody's rejoicing. I mean, I wasn't in Chicago when the news broke.
Oh,
but I have to imagine there are going to be press conference watch parties tomorrow at various bars across the city, because the boogeyman is gone. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I also don't really think the Packers are going to be that bad without him.
Wait, hold on. You don't think they're going to be that bad
without him?
You think, oh God, here we go. You probably.
So, I just think everybody's taking it for granted. The odds have gone all the way down. They're the long shot now to win the NFC North. And while I don't necessarily disagree with that, I don't think that we should expect a huge drop off necessarily. We've been through this before, and my entire life, the Packers have figured it out, and I'm just not ready to say that they're not going to do it again.
All right. Well, I guess I have to ask this question. I feel like I should know the answer, but given what happened a couple of weeks ago, I can't say that I do. Would you rather have right now Jordan Love or Justin Fields?
Justin Fields.
Oh, what? Okay. I love
right
it.
now
No,
until
right
I don't know anything about Jordan Love. Do you know anything about Jordan Love? I don't know anything about Jordan Love.
You know what? It is fair because, we can't say whether Jordan Love is good or bad, but he's a former first round pick. He was drafted ahead of Jalen Hurts. What is the expectation? Like, what do you think the expectation would be for Jordan Love?
Honestly, I think this offense is going to look like what we thought it was going to look like last year with the new receivers, the young receivers, and all that kind of stuff. I think they leaned too heavily on still having Aaron Rodgers, and they didn't tweak their system very much. The Packers didn't tweak their system very much. I think what we're going to see is Green Bay leaning on their run game. They brought Aaron Jones back for a reason. So they have Aaron Jones. They have A.J. Dillon in the backfield. It's a really great situation for a young quarterback like Jordan Love to lean on. Not to mention, still a good offensive line. I think he could do with some reinforcing there. And then if this Packers defense lives up to the talent that they have 8 first-round picks on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
So you couple that with the fact that you have a good ground game. I think that Jordan Love is in a really good situation, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have the same record, maybe even better, that they did last year. I don't even know that like a wild card is out of the question for them because, again, I grew up here. Grew up watching Packers too, and I'm just not ready to say just because Aaron Rodgers is gone that they're going to fall apart. They're not going to.
It's obviously not, but they didn't make the playoffs last year. So if they mirror last season by not making the playoffs, I would be very into that. It's funny because, having older relatives, my dad, I think I've mentioned this numerous times. My dad, outside of Charles Martin, didn't hate the Packers as much as he hated the 49ers and hated the Washington football, whatever, just because of the 80s. He still goes back and like they ruined our best seasons as opposed to the Packers who've been dominant when the Bears haven't really been good. Because when Lovie Smith first took over, he dominated the Packers, or not exactly, because there was an NFC Championship game that we lost. But in any event, but the Packers, they do have a lot of talent, and I think it is foolish to just assume they're going to be 4-13 or anything like that. That's not possible. I think they'll be very competitive, running the football, playing defense. It's a very Mitch Trubisky 2018 type of season that could be built for them. But is this going to be, but looking at the timeline for Jordan Love, is this his only season? Or what is the plan for the Packers? Like, what does their timeline look like with Jordan Love?
No, I think that you were so anxious to get him on the field that you have to give him more than 1 year. And I realize that that's not conducive to then having to pick up his 5th-year option, and you're kind of your back's against the wall and having to do that. But I think it's only fair because you really don't know what you have in him, and 1 year isn't long enough to evaluate that. Not to mention, you're giving Aaron Rodgers $40 million to F off right now. What's half that for a 5th-year option? I mean, a little more than half that. But what's half that for a 5th-year option for Jordan Love, for your quarterback under center? So you still have this exorbitant deal off the books after this year. You're eating $40 million in dead money as it currently stands. We don't know the contract details if Aaron Rodgers there's been talks about him reworking and signing the new contract to make it more palatable for both the Packers and the Jets. So we'll see. But the sentiment remains the same. You can't just give this guy, after 3 years of riding the bench, 1 year to prove himself.
Right.
In his first iteration. You wouldn't do that to any first-round pick. And just because your back's against the wall with the 5th-year option, I mean, that was kind of your doing. You should have moved on last year. But I think that that's something that they're willing to eat, especially when it comes to, I mean, listen, they got a great return for Aaron Rodgers. They have 11 picks in this draft. You're going to be able to arm Jordan Love with a lot of talent on top of what he already has. And you need to give him some time to get used to that.
I want to get into which side of this is the winner, but I feel like this is very similar to what Daniel Jones went through last season with the New York Giants, where Brian Daboll was going to give him more than one season to go out there and prove what he's got. And I would tell every Bears fan this too. Like, we don't want the Packers to be that bad. Like, we want them to be like somewhat competitive because we don't want them challenging for Caleb Williams. Like, we don't want any sort of situation like that at all. So we want them to be like sort of good, sort of mid, but nothing great or anything like that.
I could see them middling just like they did this past year, honestly. I don't see them really going any further down than that. And like I said, if Jordan Love, I know Matt LaFleur has tried to temper expectations on Jordan Love, right? At owners' meetings, he was like, is he going to come in and be Aaron Rodgers? Of course not. Aaron Rodgers is 4-time MVP, 2 times in the last 3 years. But can he turn into another potential Hall of Fame quarterback? We don't know, and he very well could. And like I said, growing up in Chicago, my entire lifetime, I do not know the Packers without a future Hall of Famer under center. I was 4 years old when Favre took over.
Right.
So I can't allow myself to think that they made such a big mistake for a guy that they traded up to get and has now had the benefit of 3 years learning from one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game and being indoctrinated into the system that he is already so familiar with. I just think that transition is going to go pretty seamlessly, quite honestly.
All right. Well, you need to go Google Don Majkowski and Lynn Dickey and some of these other scrubs that played for the Packers. And
it's a different game now. It doesn't do me any good.
That's fair. Yeah, they had bigger shoulder pads and everything. Who do you feel though? Like I saw I saw both fan bases claiming that they fleeced the other. I felt it was pretty even. I thought like both teams did pretty well, and I actually think that Joe Douglas did a nice job in what he did for the New York Jets. Is it possible to say that both teams came out ahead on this?
Yes. This is a very rare occurrence where it worked out for everybody. There was no going back. We talked about that so many times. The Jets had made this very cushy, pillowy, soft landing spot for Aaron Rodgers by going and getting his favorite coach in Nathaniel Hackett, by going and getting Alan Lazard, his favorite target over the last couple of years. And they were too far gone. They had to make this trade work. Not to mention, Aaron Rodgers himself said he wanted to be a Jet. So that Packers are out at this point. To get anything back for that and to offload that contract, even though you're going to have to eat all of the dead money at this point, that's a win for them. Plus, like I said, the Packers have 11 draft picks. That's crazy. And I know the sticking point was they wanted a first rounder outright. They wanted a future first rounder outright. And the Jets were like, no, we're not going to give that to you because we don't know if he's going to be there for more than 1 year, which is a totally valid concern. What did they do? They got a conditional second round pick that is based on play time, not on performance. 65, as long as Aaron Rodgers, this is what's being reported, is that as long as Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the Jets' offensive snaps, he's a quarterback, he's supposed to play 100%. He's going to blow past that barring any sort of injury, and that becomes a first round pick. So did you get an outright first round pick? No. But you got as good as one. Not to mention you moved up 2 spots in the draft, which I had talked about on a Twitter Spaces the other day when all of this broke. The Packers are picking at 15. They are now picking at 13. My last mock draft, I had them picking Dalton Kincaid at 15 because I didn't like the value for anything else at that point, and they really need a tight end. And I think it would be really funny if they chose a pass catcher, not a wide receiver, but a pass catcher in the first round. Yeah. Now that Aaron Rodgers is gone. But moving up to that 13th spot, I know it's only 2 spots, but it changed things for me. And I'm like, now you're talking about getting one of the top tackles in this class. Now you might have your pick of the litter at wide receiver. Those 2 spots made a difference, not to mention the Packers and the Jets have some very similar needs when it comes to first-round draft talent. And what the Jets allowed the Packers to do was jump them. So now it's going to be, I think it worked out really, really well for the Packers. I think the Packers probably had the edge throughout this whole process because they could have even kept Aaron Rodgers on the books. Like they didn't really have to trade him. It would have been a really big pill to swallow, but they would have been fine. Whereas the Jets were just SOL. So that being said, I think this worked out for both sides and it took long enough. So I hope it did,
I would say so. I think that both teams, because everything, as you said, was so telegraphed, they couldn't really go out there and, pretend like they were going to get Lamar Jackson or anything. One last thing on Aaron Rodgers. I'll say this right now. To me, and people will disagree, and they've already disagreed on Twitter, the Jets to me are the favorite. I really do believe that they're the favorite. I honestly, like, the Jets last year were playing so well with Zach Wilson and Mike White. Aaron Rodgers is going to come in. Aaron Rodgers is also going to come in probably fully healthy. His thumb's going to be fine. I think he goes for like at least 5K, 50 touchdowns. It's funny because after all the years of hearing that Aaron Rodgers is the best of all time, now people act like he sucks. And you're like, wait a minute. Like, you couldn't praise him enough when he was in Green Bay, and now in New York. Like, what? Why would I temper expectations? I think the Jets are the favorite in the AFC. How do you feel the Jets look right now?
I'm not ready to say they're the favorite in the AFC just because that is a minefield of competition. I do, however, think that they are in contention for the favorite in the AFC East.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm in AFC East. I'm sorry. I'm in AFC East.
Okay. I'm like, not the entire conference. You
got
no.
That's my mistake. I mistake. Yeah, I
misspoke. But I do think that, the Bills, we're going to see here very quickly. I agree with you. I think the thumb was a bigger deal last year than he let on, than anyone was talking about, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got a familiar offense too. That's the big part of this. Is Nathaniel Hackett runs a system that he is intimately familiar with, though the guys that he's throwing to don't know him as well yet. Mark my words, he shows up to OTAs, it's over. Like, it is over for everyone. If he actually kind of gets acclimated to this, I don't know that it's. I hesitate to say it's over. It's not 5,050 touchdowns. That's still a tall order for a 38-year-old quarterback.
17 games. He's fine. It's gonna happen. And I'm letting it. Listen, like you said, you keep saying, like, you've grown up in Chicago. You know all too well how good Aaron Rodgers is, and you know who else knows all too well how great Aaron Rodgers is one of the best in the business. She is one of my colleagues at the NFL Network. Each week she offers projections during the regular season, which honestly, pretty spot on. That's what I use for fantasy football. Now she is a major part of the NFL Network draft coverage, and we are honored to have her joining us here this evening as we welcome back to the show Cynthia Frelund of the NFL Network. Where's Gordy? I gotta see. Can we see? Where's Gordy?
He'll come up in a second. Every time I turn on the light, the dog's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I being summoned?" He loves it.
Yeah, Gordy just kind of saunters in like, "Hey, is it my time to shine?"
He's like, "I'll come in at the end and just steal the whole show." That's just how I roll.
That's what yes. Well, we'll look forward to an appearance for him. We're very thankful to have you here. We know you're very busy. We appreciate you taking the time. The Rodgers deal finally got done. Who got the best of it?
To be honest, I think it was the Jets. I know a lot of people talk about the leverage that the Packers had, but I don't know. I did the math. The pick flip from the only two spots at the two spots they were picking was worth like 100 points on the Jimmy Johnson scale, which is nothing, like a fourth rounder. And then the potential for a contingent second round, or to translate to a first round pick, and then whatever those later round swaps that happened. To be honest, they really didn't get it. It's a back end. It would be a back end. Maybe I kind of value it at like 800 fake points, right? Which is like in the 20s for a pick. So I just think that, look, Aaron Rodgers, his opportunity with the Jets is, to actually play. Whereas like the Packers, their opportunity was to pay him and him not play, or to get anything for him and then move on. So I think they actually both won. But in reality, I think like in terms of the deal-making structure, I actually think the Jets did a better job in terms of, the straight haul than did the Packers.
I think it's interesting too, though, to think a little bit ahead and play the what if game, though. Because if Rodgers, he said he was 90% retired coming into, and I don't know that I believe that. Right. But hypothetically, the Jets could be right back needing a quarterback next year without a first round pick if he decides to retire after playing almost all of the Jets offensive snaps. So that conditional pick becomes a first rounder. You're shipping that off to Green Bay, and now you need a quarterback because yours just retired after a year. I I like to play that what if game just a little bit more, and maybe it's because I want the Packers to kind of come out, which is weird to say on the better end of this.
To me, the reality is like, some of these coaches this isn't to be offensive to Jets coaches at all, but it's been kind of a revolving door there for quite some time. And, sometimes you just have to plant your flag and go for it. So it's less about, to me, like, this isn't like Bill Belichick, who gets the opportunity to play with some non-Tom Brady quarterbacks and see how it goes, right? This is like, they need to win now, because this is probably, they get a couple of years and we're nearing the end of that couple of years. And so you might as well, like, instead of strike out looking, like, just take a big old crack at it, like just the biggest one possible.
Yeah, it is. But how did you appreciate the news though? I mean, obviously Carmen and I are Bears fans, or at least I'm a Bears fan. Carmen,
I was going to say, you can't really put that on me right now. I used to be a Bears fan.
Yeah. And then, wait, hold on. Okay. Well, he was very excited that he's very excited that Aaron Rodgers is no longer here. How did you celebrate? What? Clay, come here. Come here real quick. Come say, they want to say hello. I'm so sorry.
Hi. Oh, you're very cute.
Can you hear them? She said you're very cute. Okay. Now go. Get out of here. He was we went to Rite Aid today to go get ice cream, and as you do, you walk around the store, while you're eating your ice cream, and he found there's a camera over the liquor section. So then he spent his whole time there dancing in front of it, and he was like, "Dad, come here and dance." And I guess he takes after me, mugging for the camera at great length. Okay. I don't know how to. Carmen, you probably have I think you have a question. I'm sorry, I've lost all train of thought.
You were just asking if I was as happy as you were.
Yes, that's what I was. Yeah. How was it?
Yeah. You're a fellow NFC Norther, Cynthia. So
I mean, the one rule about being a Lions fan is that we're self-loathing. So it's like, oh, right, but we just lost a bunch of players last week, whatever. Like, Aaron Rodgers leaving is a very helpful. I mean, I remember a Rodgers to Rodgers pass that was pretty gut-wrenching and a pretty terrible memory for me. But, other than that, I'm pretty stoked that he's gone. And it's also, I would just like to point out that at this moment in time, Jared Goff is a top 5 NFC quarterback. Let's just put that out there.
Yep.
And NFC North, yes. Jared Goff is a top 5 NFC North quarterback.
No,
NFC North. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. You can quote me on that. I don't mind people knowing Jared Goff top 5 in the NFC North of quarterbacks.
I will say, I tweeted when the Rodgers news hit. I don't know if you guys have seen Space Jam, but like the aliens when they're little, and I'm like NFC quarterbacks, and then the Monstars, and I'm like AFC quarterbacks, because the field is so the discrepancy in talent between the two conferences now is just the balance just continues to shift. It's wild. Yeah, but I did have a question. Should we go into questions for Cynthia? Because I have a question.
I know you do.
Off of the Aaron Rodgers thing. This is a Bears podcast. We're not talking too much about Aaron Rodgers anymore. Okay. I'm taking a page out of your book, Adam. But I want to know about a guy that could potentially fall to, that I've been hearing a lot about. Teams have taken visits with him in the top 10. Jalen Carter. Every team I've heard recently that has interviewed him comes away feeling better about him. What is the general consensus, do you think, as to Jalen Carter's prospective range? Do you think that he falls out of the top 10? Do you think he makes it down to number 9 for the Bears? Or are we still talking about, well, he's one of the best defensive prospects, so he's not getting out very far? Okay.
I don't think he's getting past Seattle. I think he's I think he's a top 6 pick at the most. I don't think Bears fans need to do too much investigating as to whether they want Jalen Carter, because I don't think he's not going to be on the board, like, in my opinion. And, feeling better, look, like, they're obviously well documented that he had some off the field questions about things that happened. Every player who has things like that, like, at least he got a chance to address them in the all 30s. Makes me feel more comfortable with, like, the process. Remember, Laramie Tunsil didn't get a chance to address whatever happened with him. So, I'm just happy that a person's able to give their side of the story before the draft. But don't worry about it, Chicago, because he ain't going to be there.
I think it's interesting. Well, like, what if Seattle passes on him, and what if the Lions pass on him? Then is it worth taking him? Because clearly there's something that they've uncovered.
Well, I mean, look, like, it depends on who's making the picks, right? Like, I would say sometimes Seattle has made, I guess we're going to use like weird picks. Like, I don't, they're not as weird as the Patriots, but Seattle doesn't always take who we have consensus decided in the media is the best player. And the Lions, like, let's be fair, like, who knows? Like, I feel like sometimes they could throw a dart and that could be their decision. So, and also, like, if Aaron Glenn is really pounding the table, they got rid of Jeff Okudah, who was a first round pick in the second year, and Aaron Glenn was a defensive back. So it depends on how much, people have a voice and who's making the actual decision. I just don't think he gets, and then of course, you remember the Las Vegas also could really, I mean, Vegas's defense, like, the entire thing could be filled out with new players. So, I mean, I just feel like there's too many people who would have him ranked too highly that it's unfortunate. I mean, and I actually don't think that's a problem. I think that there are going to be a lot of great players. 9's a really nice spot, especially with presumably 2 to 3 quarterbacks having already been gone. So that's only 6 spots. That's not a bad, you're picking 7th. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
And if it gets crazy and 4 quarterbacks go in that top 9, like, it's even better for the Bears. And it's just, Carmen and I have talked about this at great length, where we keep saying, like, the Lions and Seattle make way too much sense. And if they don't, then they move on. Even Atlanta would make sense because they need help on the defensive front as well. But one player that's been mocked to Atlanta recently gets mocked to the Bears a lot. And I'm talking about Bijan Robinson. I keep seeing his name connected. Daniel Jeremiah mentioned it. This can't be real.
Yeah, automatic no.
Thank you.
No. I mean, look, it's not, look, I would love, like, I went to college with Ryan Poles. We think exactly the same. And that's what, but no, I mean, look, I just don't think that they have the luxury of picking a running back, especially that high up. Remember the way that the pricing works out, what you're picking in the top, like, you probably should pick a high position value player, like a defensive end or a corner or something a little bit higher, just the way that the rookie pay scale nets out. But it's not that Bijan Robinson isn't a very special running back. He absolutely is. I just don't think that when you have a quarterback that's as dynamic as Justin Fields, you're going to look to add at that position when you've got, like, an entire O-line to help him out with, and also a lot of defensive needs, like a secondary would be great. And, some pass rush help would also kind of be nice. And, it can never get too many pass catchers, right? There's just too many, most people, and, would say, like, the 5 key positions: quarterback, left tackle, edge rusher, cornerback, wide receiver, and, edge and left tackle and corner and receiver can be, you can flip flop those, but those are the 5 value positions. Because the Bears have needs at those positions, I just don't see them going for the luxury of a running back that high, especially with, they're smart people there. Like, these are smart people.
By the way, this is the Braxton Jones show of record. So insinuating the Bears need a left tackle is a little offensive to us, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll allow for you. Anybody else, I would have been, if it was Brian Perez or somebody else.
Peter Skoronsky, then you could, like, use him as a guard or a tackle. So
don't say guard. This is also the Peter Skoronsky is not a guard show of record.
I don't think he's a guard either, but I don't think he's a guard. I don't either.
No, I've talked to his trainer that he's been working with this offseason, and he is very adamant that Peter himself is adamant. I'm a tackle. I'm going to shut everybody up about playing guard or whatever.
Tackle too, because it's a lot more. But good for him. But yes, no, and I'm not worried about his arms. They're not out of range small. They're shorter than some people's, but they're not out of range small. His center of gravity is good. He's not a waist bender. He's a tackle.
All right.
Girl.
Now the two of you are ganging up on me. All right, that's fine. He can go play tackle for the Jets and protect Aaron Rodgers and do all that stuff, but it's okay. As long as it's not Bijan Robinson, and it's nothing against Bijan Robinson per se, who is probably going to be a fantastic player. But for the Bears, I say no.
No, I would agree with you. I feel like Bijan Robinson, I'll be I would really like, if you were being like if you were neutral, right, about all of it, like realistically somewhere in the 20s, you'd think a decent, like, all right. And I don't love a first round running back always, analytics people, whatever, but he does have a lot of pass catching value. He runs deeper routes. He runs crossers. He runs like a lot more routes even than some of the pass catching running backs we talk about, but he's not enough for me in that regard to overcome the positional value of something else that you could get instead in those top 20 something picks.
So what should the Bears do?
Build in the trenches. Depending on, look, if I'm the Bears, like, start with your O-line if you can, or if they have fallen in, like, I know that Coach Eberflus is a really good defensive mind, and if he's fallen in love with, like, if the corner of his dreams happens to fall down there, then why not? But I would say build from the inside out first. But again, if who am I to say that, if Devin Witherspoon somehow is still available, like, snatch, good. He doesn't even need to change the color of his uniform, right? Like, that's fantastic. But things with their, rational things kind of playing out, I would say probably O-line, maybe one of the pass rushers if something weird happens and we get like 4 quarterbacks in the top 10. Maybe you can get one of those pass rushers.
Yeah, what is Nolan Smith? Is it too high at number 9 to go for him?
No, I think the value's there. Like, look, Nolan Smith is, you couldn't, if it were an offensive minded head coach, I would be like, maybe not. But if it's a defensive minded head coach, then I think that it's a much better fit because they have this vision. Nobody plays base defense anymore. So Nolan Smith he's not like like, you wouldn't think of him like 10 years ago. If he came out, I would say maybe 9's a little too rich, but because the versatility of these fronts is what it is, people lining up all these different places, I think his output from college shows that he could easily, transition to the NFL, especially with a defensive-minded head coach.
Love that.
And when you look at, Ryan Pohl's history going back to last season, when he turned 6 picks into 11, what is the probability of him trying to get out of 9? Now, I know a lot of times you don't want to trade down just for the sake of trading down, but it does feel like some of these linemen, whether it's Paris Johnson Jr. or Skoronski or Osiris or any of these guys, it feels like there's a lot of commonality to where you would probably benefit from trading down. Do you think that could be in the Bears' plans?
Yeah, I think trading down it could make a lot of sense, but I need to give like a quick shout out to how well executed this trade was, because some people are like, oh, they should have waited longer to get rid of number 1. And then you could have maybe gotten more. And I actually completely disagree with that, because talking to some of my friends around the league, I think that the Bears hit it right in that sweet spot before anyone knew who they really wanted at quarterback and kind of what this consensus would be. And now all these silly rumors that come out draft week about like, we love Will Levis and we're going to trade up, like all these silly things happen. And you don't people like, it was really smart. I feel like if there was like a stock chart, like you sold it at the high, it would not have gotten higher before that. So he's already spun it into gold, in my opinion. So I wouldn't be surprised if he picked it 9, but I think that the board's probably pretty, like you talked about Osiris Torrance, like that guy could be in the 2nd round easily. So, it's like, this is, but he's not
a bad player. I think that's what I was
it's just because people don't think guards have as much about positional value. So if that's kind of what they're aiming for, then heck, why not? But I think this draft, a lot of teams are trying to trade down because the general perception is that there's maybe only like 15 to 20 like real normal first rounders, as opposed to like, usually in years past, we've seen like 2 rounds of people who could be first rounders depending on system fit. So I think a lot of teams are trying to trade down.
Well, let me ask you then, because it does sound like all these teams want to bounce because none of these quarterbacks have really quite separated, regardless of what Will Levis thinks of himself. Is there a chance, and nobody's been talking about this, could the Bears trade up? Like, what if they decided, like, you know what, we absolutely need Jalen Carter? And then nobody's talking about this, but could the Bears possibly be in the market to trade up if, like, something weird happens? I don't know if the Colts would want to move all the way down to 9, but what about the Bears moving up?
I mean, look, when you just have to find the trade partner. That's the only thing, right? Like the reality is like, okay, well, number 3 becomes really interesting if somehow the Texans don't take a quarterback. So then you don't need to go up to 3, right? And then now at 4, it's likely the Colts. So you'd really be looking at 5. Okay, so Seattle, they kind of have similar needs. Are they going to want to agree to trade with you? I don't know. Like,
probably not.
And that, like, so you have to kind of think of where the trade partners might be. I like the idea of in this draft, like everyone's zigging, so zag, right? Like everyone's saying, like, I want to trade down. I want to trade down. Well, if you're not getting the right surplus value for the trade, don't trade down. Just make the pick. At some point, it's like the pick matters more than that you get an extra 7th round pick for something, right? Like now I would love that because like I love the like math behind all of it, but on some level, like unless you're getting more than you would have done just picking, just make the darn pick. You know what I mean? Like and sure, if something really weird happens, like it goes like quarterback, and you go to Seattle and you're like, oh crap, I want Will Anderson with every ounce of my soul. Like, okay, well, you'd have to probably give up a lot in order to take a player who they might want.
Yeah, and having acquired so much in that Carolina trade that it might not behoove them to go out and make those deals. So yeah, like you said, sometimes staying at 9, you got a top 10 pick. Why not take advantage of it? And we should also take advantage of all the people who've been joining us here this evening, leaving questions. Sammy, I hope we have some questions. Oh my God, listen, they don't have to wait when they're going to spend $10. But here we go. What is the chance, in your individual opinion, that the Bears trade out of number 9? Now, we just talked about this. You don't trade out to trade out, but like, what is your feeling? Like, do you, knowing Ryan Poles as you do you think, what are the odds?
If too many defenders go, then I think he trades out. If the quarterbacks start to fall and you're now picking, much higher than 9 would suggest, like if one of their defensive gems is on the board, they'll pick. But I think that Ryan's probably making some calls to trade down even just a little bit because, hopping in front of some really O-line needy teams is an enticing option. And maybe you could get, a piece of the action. Maybe the Texans want like something again, right? And they can come up and from 12, who knows, right? But so I would actually put it at 60 that they pick and 40 that they trade. 60-40.
Ooh. That's for what you were just saying though, like that. With all these teams that are trying to trade down, is that market going to be there for him? That's my only concern. Like, because it takes 2 to tango, right? I think ideally you would trade down, especially if one of those guys doesn't end up falling, one of those blue chip defenders, and you can get more value later on. But I would probably go 70-30 that they make the pick. They have so much draft capital between now and next year as well that I'm like, are you just getting greedy at this point by trading down and trying to do that? Ooh, do we have a guest opinion? A guest?
Ooh, another guest. I love it.
I know.
I'm like,
or it's I know it's just yours and I show now. It's
perfect. Yeah, no, I actually think like it's interesting. I'm really glad that the Aaron Rodgers stuff dropped today or yesterday and was more clear today because I was worried it was going to be Thursday and we were going to be it was just going to be crazy, or it was going to be like last minute Wednesday. So we like all morning Thursday, we'd be talking about it, but I'm glad they ironed it out now.
I wouldn't have put it past if Rodgers had any sway over when that was brought out or when that was trotted out. I feel like he would have wanted it like during the first round of the draft, just to completely blow it up and take over the attention.
I know. I mean, I think it's very interesting in terms of the Packers. Their pick is going to be like, I think that if they really want to like give the middle finger to Aaron Rodgers, they would draft a first round wide receiver for like the first time in forever, because it just feels like something like, we'll do it now, of course, when you're gone.
I'm sure you can relate to this. My petty little heart would love nothing more than for them to take some sort of pass catcher now that he's gone and be like, well, see, we're capable of it. Okay. And honestly, I had this discussion and I would be interested to get your take on it, given the value between the 15th and the 13th pick. I had mocked Dalton Kincaid to the Green Bay Packers in my last mock. But now that they're up picking at 13, that all of a sudden, I know it's just 2 spots. I know the value isn't crazy, but that seems too rich now for Dalton Kincaid. And now I think that maybe you've put yourself in the conversation for one of those top receivers.
I think so. To me, Jackson Smith and Jigba is the first receiver off the board.
Yeah.
He's the best one. He's got a lot of presence in the slot, but that doesn't mean he catches only shorter passes. He's got a lot of good yards after the catch as well. You know, I feel like that pick was just a ego move. I think that was to make the math sort of balance out from that Jimmy Johnson chart, so people felt better about themselves. But I don't even know if I actually think it sounds strange, but I think that they're probably looking, it would seem maybe an O lineman would be another one that they would think, because again, 13 to 15 is not that big of a difference, but you know, in theory, the Jets also need an O lineman, and so do some of the teams behind them, like Washington, et cetera. So, you know, that would be, to me, I think that was an ego moment. That's what I'll call it.
A little bit of a power.
That was teased the ego.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I do think that, and we just talked about it at the top of the show, where now the Packers are going to be able to jump the Jets for a prospect that they potentially would have taken. And so that was kind of Goody just being like, okay, you're not going to give me a first round pick outright, but guess what? I might take a prospect.
If they take Dalton Kincaid, I'll lose my mind though. I'll be like,
oh my God. It will cackle.
Wait, if the Packers still take Dalton Kincaid?
Yeah.
Despite moving up 3, yeah. By the way, was I muted? By the way, I don't know if you heard what was going on. Everybody's fine.
You were muted.
Everybody's good. A little bit of an accident, but it's okay.
Like no blood. Band-Aids needed. Are we good?
No Band-Aids. No. It was it was a cleanup accident.
Got it. Okay, that I can handle, but no like blood or Band-Aids.
No.
Yeah, no.
If it was me, it would be stitches involved. Like right here. I probably got, I don't know how many times.
I had those too. I got those too.
Yeah. No, the boy was too confident in his tooting ability. And it's like, well, maybe you know.
Perfect.
Listen, we've all been there. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. So Dalton Kincaid, a bunch of good stuff. How about another question, Sammy? Sorry, I'll just jump in with one of those. Oh my gosh. Rick Reuter, Lukas Van Ness is a Watt brother from another mother. Thoughts on him at number 9? Yeah, I've seen him going as early as number 8 to Atlanta, as late as 15, sometimes in the late teens. What do you think about Luther Van Ness?
I like Van Ness. I think he would, to me, all of his data, he didn't play as many snaps as I'd like to usually see someone play. And he has some situational data, meaning he's best suited for something where he can kind of fold in, not every single down, and then be added with more snaps and more snaps and more snaps. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't see something that is a position where what he plays and all the different alignments that he was a pass rusher out of, that is something that is easier to adapt to at the NFL level. He's not my number 1 rated guy. He's not, I think I have him at 4 or 5 like in terms of the position, but I still think it's a great pick. And he would be he'd be even better like with a Watt, you know, like for the Steelers,
right.
Something like that. He would be better with another pass rusher as well.
I've had some conversations with some scouts around the league because a guy that was a rotational player that didn't start, I'm like, explain this guy to me like I'm 5, please. Just I need to understand what everybody's seeing in him. And I was just told that he does one thing and he does it really well. And so pairing him, like you said, with a guy like Watt or another guy on the edge, like he doesn't have the versatile toolbox that I think that he could perhaps develop into with a couple of years at the league level. But he does one thing, rushes straight forward very, very well and would be very suited as like a 4-3 defensive end, despite the fact that really no one stays in base anymore. But that being said, I was like, okay, now I kind of get it. And he's a complimentary piece, but he's a damn good one.
But if you're a team like Detroit, though, who has that extra pick in the top 10, would he make sense for the Lions?
The Lions defense, while a really good pass rusher would be great, a really good interior player would be better. And also like the other side of that corner situation. They did address corner in free agency and they did a nice job. However, that was with Jeff Okudah, who they got rid of for just a 5th round pick, which I don't know what that means, but seems like not a lot of compensation for a former 1st round pick. Anyways, a 3rd overall. So I would imagine that
it doesn't sound like you're bitter at all.
Interior defenders, like even a Kalijah Cansey to me, who's like, more like a miniature player that like a little Aaron Donald, like not comparing him, but more of the undersized, like not the prototype, like going corner and then Kalijah Cansey, that actually adds more value than a guy like Van Ness, who I don't know how that front really operates as well. Like Van Ness to me is an eagle. Like he's built like he's an eagle. Like they have all those guys and they come from everywhere, and that's what they do best.
Yeah, it almost feels like for the Bears, it's a little bit like, not to put him in the same category as Bijan Robinson, but also one of those situations where like the Bears aren't there yet. Like, yeah, he's a good player. Like if this defense was more established and you're bringing him onto a team that had Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn or something like that, then like, oh my gosh, this guy comes in as another wave. Absolutely. So I'm not as sold on him as a lot of people are. Although, I wouldn't be mad
if you drafted him. I could be like, draft. Like it's not the end of the world. It's just not and again, we have to see how the board falls, right? Like,
yeah. Well, there's also of it too. Like I trust Eberflus and I trust Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham to like whatever they do. Even going back to Bijan Robinson, if for some reason the Bears ended up with him, I guarantee you, I will be here on Thursday night rationalizing why this was such a great idea. Just because I feel like, and people feel like it's foolish to give so much trust to this staff already, but I feel like they've done a pretty good job. And like, if that's a player that this organization, this regime has identified as somebody who's going to come in and play immediately, I'm all for it. I'm like, okay, let's see let's watch them cook and let's see what they're doing. So I wouldn't be opposed to it. Again, if that's who they end up with, that's who they evaluate. Okay. I'm on board. Okay. How about another question though? Do you believe that the Williams fiasco will alter the Lions draft plans? Yeah. You know what? Like you thought about Jameson Williams coming into that offense who, they looked loaded, and, especially with Amon-Ra St. Brown playing so well, I thought that was just going to be an opportunity for them to take a real leap offensively. What do you think? What do you think that could mean for the Lions?
I think it could mean, come here, Gordy. I think the Lions will have to figure out what to do at wide receiver, but I don't think that it'll alter their 1st round plans. I think that they'll still, I think they probably have their draft boards set. And I don't think, this is not hold on, I'm trying to lure him with treats. This is not as strong of a top end of a draft class as we've seen for wide receivers. In a while, there's a lot of different flavors of wide receivers. So I think that they'll probably have to address it in later rounds.
Yeah. We're, by the way, having the cutest off with the kids and the dogs.
I know. I'm like, what do I've got my Stanley Cup right here. Like, cool, guys. Thanks. I don't have a dog. I don't have kids.
He's right now. He'll squirm in like a second.
What a little lover. They're so cute. Oh.
He's tired.
I do think it's, and now I'm totally distracted by the dog. I do know it's great. I think that wide receiver was still in need for the Lions as it was. So whether the value ends up being there I don't think you take him with you take a receiver with the 6th pick, but your second 1st round pick, if the value's there, like on a Zay Flowers, or I even said a Quentin Johnston, just because he's a bigger guy. And I feel like that would mesh well with what they already have, and with James Williams out for a little while, especially. But
I just don't want this to turn into like a Matt Millen experiment with every wide receiver, and then like always trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, it is one of those things. I think Lions fans are still reeling from that. So I understand that you're probably just, and by the way, and you got such a great value when you drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown. You don't need to go back into the 1st round, especially not the top 10.
No.
To go after a wide receiver. All right. How about another question? What do we got, Sammy? Who would you pick at tackle? Broderick Jones, Darnell Wright, Peter Skoronski, or Paris Johnson Jr.? I think that's what that's supposed to. It's not JPP, but PPJ. Wait, PJP.
Yeah.
PJJ.
I would go. My order is Skoronski, PJJ. To get it right, PJJ.
Yes.
Roderick, and then Tennessee, which is right. Sometimes I call them by school still because I watched it a lot, so the color gets stuck in my head.
Okay. I would love to know what.
Oh, please go ahead.
No, I would love to know what you think about Anton Harrison, the kid out of Oklahoma. I think that we're not talking about him enough, and I've talked to some people who think that he could potentially be one of the top 3 tackles off the board.
I do. I think he's a first round. If he falls in the second round, that's going to be some ridiculous value. But it's interesting because when you watch him, he doesn't have like as much of the quickness as some of the other guys. Like watch Skoronski's feet. Skoronski has some of the best feet like in the entire like draft class period along the line at all. But he doesn't have quite as much, but he's really physical and he's really like, he's going to push you. That is a bad, large man. Like I think he's great. I don't know I'm not sure if he'll end up being 3rd. I think he's my 5th or 6th. So very high, but you know that like, I don't love that offense for forecasting for except if you're a pass catcher. It's just a harder, the offensive line play there has not historically been as good, and who you learn offensive line play from actually does correlate to success at the next level. So, I mean, it's not that I don't like him. I just, to me, it's like, he's probably 5. Like, I think he's 1st round, early 2nd round.
Yeah, I've seen his name, garnering a lot of buzz over the last couple of weeks. And again, as it does during draft week, but is there something to be said, when a lot of people, myself included, believe that Ryan Poles has a certain prototype of an offensive tackle where he's got to have longer. And I know this comes off as anti-Skoronski, but does Ryan Poles, does he have a prototype? And does this happen with a lot of teams where they're like, nope, we like our tackles to do this, they have these measurables or anything? Or are there certain players where you're like, it doesn't matter, he's just too good, we can't pass him up?
Ian said that in his presser today, Cunningham. So he said something like, what's your ideal tackle? He's like, he's long with long arms. And everyone's like, that means it's not Skoronski. I mean, I don't know. I think it's smokescreen at this point. To my knowledge, I know the Kansas City way, and I know what they value and what they have ranges for things like, and it's not that they wouldn't go outside of those ranges. It's just that they'd have to have a really good reason to, which is what I think most people would say in that regard as well. So when I'm looking at this, I'm like, I think that they would take him. I also think that they're not going to say who they're going to like. Why would they be like, we actually like a guy who some people project as a guard.
Yeah. But sometimes it comes off the other way where it's like, oh, like because like then the conspiracy theorist comes out of like, wait a minute, he's going so far overboard that it leads me to believe that they love Skoronski. I
actually believe he was answering the question that was asked, which is, what is your ideal tackle?
That's not fun. But you know what? That is
I'm not fun. We've established this, Rank. I'm not.
You are the most enjoyable person that I work with. And I just got myself in a lot of trouble, by the way, by saying that. And I don't care. I'll stand by it. Here's my thing. I feel like the Bears, especially Ryan Poles, have been so deliberate in everything that they do. Like last year, Ryan Poles is like, listen, we need help on the defensive side of the football. He drafts 2 defensive backs in the 2nd round when everybody was screaming for a wide receiver. And again, when they're out there and they're like, we like tall, long tackles, I think we should probably believe them when they're saying that is their prototype, and that's probably the person that they're going after. So Charles Davis, stop mocking Peter Skoronski no, I'm just kidding. Love the Charles Davis. We love him. But how about another question?
Yeah.
Thoughts on trading as far back with Pittsburgh at 19 and also getting their 32nd pick, essentially a 1st round pick, as we've been told at great length by everybody. Could they drop all the way down? But Pittsburgh's not 19, are they? I thought they were like 17. I thought Tampa Bay was whatever. Could they trade? I know we've heard about a possible deal with Pittsburgh. Is that something that's possible?
Sure. I mean, I also think that there's a couple of people who the Bears could make good use of in the early second round. Like BJ Ojulari is a guy out of LSU who a lot of people are talking about as a riser, could be in the first round, the back end of the first round. I mean, that could be one if they're targeting kind of like, all right, there's a couple of guys we could pick if we picked up a little bit of trade value a little later, but I'm not suggesting to take Ojulari at 17 or 19 or whatever number that is. I'm saying like, if you're thinking about who at 32 could make some sense, that one, or even, there's a few like corners that have been popping up that could be valuable there as well. So there's just a few guys there. You're like, okay, well, it would make a lot of sense, but it would have to be, you'd have to get that second pick. And right now I would imagine, I don't know who all Pittsburgh's going to call. Like, I don't know. Like I said, trade partner, trade value. But I know one thing. I don't think Ryan Poles is not going to give up surplus value. So I don't think he's going to get hosed. You're not going to be in a situation where you're trading up for maybe a position and maybe get a little hosed. It's not happening. That's not happening.
Yeah, we're not going to see.
I would like that top of the first round though, or second round rather, is very, very interesting. Given I actually really like BJ. I think obviously he had a better season 2 years ago than he had this season, and so recency bias kind of comes into that. But I actually watched him play this season when I went to an LSU game. But that being said, we were just talking about all those offensive tackles though that could potentially not go in the first round. And if any of those guys are there, God, that's a really great. But I suppose you're taking that risk if you go all the way down because you're not going to know that at 9.
But if you have like a few that all would be in that area, then it would make sense, right? Because then you're going down to 19, you pick the one that you think won't be there when you go back around. And then the second, like, it would be nice to get a 2-for-1 situation. Absolutely. But again, it's all about, like, I think every team is trying to trade down. Like, I've talked to so many teams that they're, I think I heard Terry Fontenot from the Falcons today talk about, we've talked to teams about trading up. We've talked to teams about trading down. I actually think he's not lying. I think he's
I feel like that's a script. Yeah, every general manager has said that.
Yeah, but I actually think this. I actually believe them this season, right? Also, Terry's not a big liar. He's not. There are some people who are lying liars who lie, but like Terry's not one of them. So
who are the biggest lying liars who lie?
Kyle Shanahan.
Oh yes,
love him. But like, remember when he says things like, "We don't know if we're going to be here on Sunday." You're like,
"Oh my God."
Right.
Will any of us be here?
Be dead by Sunday.
Yeah, we don't know what it. Yeah,
but like some smoke screens. Whoever Will Levis's agent is, that guy's smoke screen central. But I like it. It's part of the fun. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's super fun. It made Vegas go crazy. So whatever. But I like a good smoke screen. But you can track who knows agents and whatever and kind of see it. But I don't know. I appreciate the gamesmanship. I do.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would do the same thing if I was Will Levis, is just tell people like, I think I'm going in the first round or the first overall pick. Yeah. Let everybody go. It's like the GameStop thing all over again. Now everybody's buying. They bought GameStop and it went up.
And then the stock.
Are you calling Will Levis a meme stock?
A little bit. I mean, that's what it would be. He would be the equivalent, right? Like, I don't really know about this. Nobody
but I kind of appreciate it. I appreciate the gamesmanship. I do. I think it's funny, and I think it's like, I mean, who knows if it works or not? But it isn't like, it's not like people are saying, "Oh, wow, he told everyone, I'm not going to draft him now." Like it's not. There's really no downside. So I would do it.
Yeah, you know what? I would as well. I think it's a lot of fun of the draft. Let's try to. Do we have time for one more? Let's try to squeeze in one more. Oh my gosh, Apostle! If both Tyree Wilson and Jalen Carter were there at 9, and yes, this is make believe land. Who do the Bears take?
I'm going to be totally honest with you. If you get a chance to talk to Tyree Wilson is so perfectly aligned for one being in Chicago. Like, all he thinks about, like, every question came back to, and I want to kick his butt, everything came back to like wanting to win. And it was like super refreshing because you sit there and you're like all his life was like, I had so much fun with this. And I wanted to, like, he just like, he loved it. He was like not an adult, Jalen Carter had a lot of answers. Look, he's had a harder time going through these interviews. Like, whatever, different life circumstances. But the purity of Tyree, like I can see him just going downtown in Chicago and be like, this is so much fun. Like I can see him just being like everyone's favorite. And it's not you're not sacrificing any value. Like they play a different position, but you're not sacrificing a worse off player. Like Tyree Wilson to Chicago would be like, that would be a very good fit. Like chef's kiss, beautiful fit.
You give him a cake shake from Portillo's, and it would just blow his mind.
He'd be like the entire Portillo's. He would buy the entire thing. And be like, "This is fantastic! I'm going to use it. Their butts." He's just it's so he loves football, and it's really like it's nice to see someone actually likes it, right? Not talking about like their NIL deals or their. If you have to tell me one more time about your NIL deals, I'm going to lose my mind. I don't care.
A little bit, yeah. I'm kind of over those conversations as well. So it is kind of refreshing. I felt that way talking to Anthony Richardson, who I was like, I completely did a 180. Like I love him. I'm rooting for him, and I hope that he does well. And when you find players like that, it's not hard to buy in and be like, okay, yeah. And I think that the teams probably feel the same way. And I could see that being a real possibility for the Bears. And sorry that I didn't mention him.
Love Tyree Wilson's personality. Like he's just fun. Like he loves football. He's so much fun. He's like, he loves being alive. Who doesn't like that? Like he'd be hilarious at pressers. It'd be great for all of us.
Yeah. You know what? There's something to be said about that. Cause I thought last year with Jamal Williams, I thought that personality played in so well with the Detroit Lions. They made their run.
And we shipped him off. Cause that's what we do. We can't have nice things.
I don't know. That just seems like a mistake, but
huge mistake. And letting Deuce Staley walk out the door.
That was huge. No one's talking about that.
I'm talking,
and it deserves it. I know.
We're talking about it. We're talking about it now, as we should be.
Talking about it now.
Dude, everybody wants to kiss the Lions into the NFC Championship game. Not realizing, I tell them, I go, listen, the way you're talking is the way that I talked in 2019. And it did not work out well for me, but good luck to you.
Lions fans, we do actually get our Super Bowl. You know why? Because the draft is often the Lions Super Bowl, and the draft next year being in Detroit, it's like, oh, finally, the one thing we pick very soon at all the time. Yes, it's in our hometown. Get Chelly's chili, because Chris Chelios, he's a Detroit person. He's a Red Wing, not a Blackhawk. But other than that,
Okay.
What?
All right. We can
no.
You just played an alumni game at the Hawks practice facility 2 weeks ago. You can't tell me he's not a Hawk.
I think,
don't start this.
Oh my goodness.
That's I'll take you there next year for the draft.
I'm going to go to American Coney Dog, and I want somebody to explain to me how American Coney Dog is a Detroit institution. I don't get it.
There's also Detroit pizza, also confusing.
It is so good. Detroit pizza is actually very good. And I don't think
we're really good at being fat in Michigan. In Michigan, we are exceptional at being fat. So it's no surprise that.
Same in Chicago. It's really fun. Hey, listen, Cynthia, I'm going to be up in Detroit 3 weekends next month. So I'm hitting you up for recommendations.
You got it.
By the way, my friend Matt just texted because he's too good to chime in here. He said it was very nice of you to join the show tonight, Cynthia, and we agree with him. So that was very sweet.
What about your other friend who's like my fave? Is he watching?
Oh, the DePaulo brothers, they're probably watching. I'm surprised I haven't gotten a text yet because Mark is usually on it. But it's also
Mark likes me the most, though.
Mark, 100%. Yes, Mark, 100%. Although his kids get home, his kids have what season is it right now? Is it baseball season? For probably. The preps, hockey, soccer. I don't know. Pete, his oldest son, he's either playing baseball or something. So it's hard for him to catch this show. It's easier for him to catch NFL Fantasy Live because of the time window here on the West Coast. But do we have anything else, Sam? Do we have any questions we have to take before we go?
One last one.
One last one. Take one anyway, Sammy. He said no. Find one. Or if it's just somebody. Oh, by the way, if you're enjoying the show, comment using the word sick, tell a friend, do all that stuff. What are the order of needs on the Bears per group? You know what? I've been saying this over and over, and I started off saying this as a joke. where everybody looks at like wide receiver, tackle, defensive line. And I'm like, our first draft pick is going to be Christian Gonzalez. What do you think is the biggest, but what do you think is like the biggest need for the Bears? As your Ryan Poles is sitting there, he's like, I got to make sure that I solve this position. What is the one that absolutely needs to be solved?
To me, it would be somewhere between either your corner or your edge rusher. And look, I love a good tackle situation too. But your quarterback does make up for some not as great O-line play. And so you could get later round guys and do it a little bit differently. But I think defense needs a little help.
I would agree with that. I know that Carmen and I have also been on the Jackson Smith and Jigba train. Jeez Louise.
Train.
I'll get it. The accident that my son had is now the smell's starting to now make its way into the room. So if I'm a little preoccupied, I apologize. I'll ask you that before we go. I've been admonished by people for saying that Jackson Smith and Jigba would make a pretty decent addition to the Bears. Is that too rich? I know you were talking about Bijan Robinson earlier. Would it be too high to go for a wide receiver at number 9?
Nope. I don't think so. I mean, look, he's not going to be there unless you want to do some finagling elsewhere, but he's not going to be there much later. And so if that's the pick, then that's the pick. Like, go all in, put your chips in. I think that you have to remember that Smith and Jigba, he played like 88% of the time out of the slot. It would be hard to forecast him switching solely outside or doing something completely different, at least for a while. He does have good yards after the catch ability, which is something that's really important, but he's not a burner. He's not the fastest guy in the field. He is a precise and pristine route runner. In fact, he was way more productive. So last season, he only played 3 games. He got hurt, hamstrings. The season before, when he played with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, he was the most productive one on the field in terms of receptions, in terms of targets, in terms of yards per reception and touchdown. But again, you have to remember those guys are also on the field. So maybe that also gave him an opportunity to look really, really good. So that, there's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but you have to forecast him to at least start off working from the slot and then move to the outside after he understands, how NFL defenses are going to line up against him.
That makes sense.
That's very true. I go. And we got DJ Moore, so he gets to play the X spot.
I love DJ Moore.
Yeah.
He's so underrated. I love that. Like, that's such a good part of that trade that people are not, they have to value that along with the picks.
Yeah, that's
why I trust Ryan Poles. That's why I trust Ryan Poles, is because that was the sticking point.
Too, great guy.
Yeah, that was a great trade. All across the board, and the fact that was the sticking point was just genius on his part. I feel like he's playing chess, and everybody else is playing checkers.
And as you said, Cynthia, earlier in the show, talking about selling at the highest possible time, he sold his GameStop stock at the correct time. To bring it all.
Really having a time of it.
Okay, Cynthia. So what's going on with the NFL Network this week? Where can we find you as the draft ramps up on Thursday? Where are you going to be?
So we're doing the NFL Plus. We're doing a little bit different. You can obviously watch the regular broadcast or the broadcast on the fast channels, but on NFL Plus, it's like me, Rhett, Coach Shaw, Mark Ross. We're going to do it a little bit differently. So if you go watch on NFL Plus, you get to make picks with us. We don't have commercials, which is really cool. And 2, it's going to get a little wacky. And 3, you can see if I pronounce anyone's names wrong. I've been working on about like 350, 400, but you never know. Those Patriots, they could go Cole Strange on me and, make it really hard on me.
No, absolutely. They're obviously a wild card, as you mentioned earlier. Seattle is a wild card as well. NFL Plus. Are you going to do that from LA, or are you going out to Kansas City?
It's in LA, and then Friday and Saturday I'm on the fast, whatever the draft. So NFL.com and NFL. Yeah, so we'll be on the fast stuff on Saturday. So that's when I'll really get the names wrong. Feel free to make fun of me. That's a legit area to make fun of me about.
No, listen, and I will tell everybody that NFL Plus is a really good value. If you want to check out what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, over the last couple of months, NFL Plus is really something worthwhile. In this draft week, you're going to get Cynthia Frelund. You're going to get Mark Ross, Coach Shaw. As she said, it's a great value. Go check it out. I think there's probably free trials as well. If you've never checked out NFL.
I think maybe Ryan Poles will be making an appearance, doing a little interview with me after talking about why he made the picks that he did. So, like just NFL Plus. That's what we're looking all at that. It'll come out in a couple weeks.
Awesome. So check out NFL Plus. Well, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I know your schedule is super busy, so I appreciate you making the time to do this today.
You guys are the best.
No, you're the best. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go, and we'll see you on NFL Plus this week. There she goes. The great Cynthia Frelund. By the way, I didn't bring this up while she was on the show. I don't know whose Instagram post it was. There was a party this weekend. It was you, MJ, Colleen Wolfe. I was like all the superstars. Like that looked like a party. Like that was a fun. It was. Alex Curry was part of it. Like, amazing.
Joy Taylor. Yep. So I just saw Cynthia on Friday. It was a lovely event put on by Macallan. And so we got a Macallan tasting, a Scotch whiskey tasting, and it was all brought together by our friend Aaron, who just loves celebrating women in broadcast, women in sports. And there was some other women there from, yes. So she brought all of us together. That was actually the first time I've met her, but now I count her as a friend. But it was wonderful to walk into. I really didn't know what to expect. And then all of a sudden I see Cynthia and I see Colleen, I see MJ, Joy and Alex. And like Joy and Alex and I are all obviously all at Fox. So it was a lovely event. And we all had bright colors on. And that was totally not planned. It was like finally nice in LA after being really dreary for a while. So I guess all of us just had the same thought process of like, well, I'm just going to wear a bunch of color. But it was a lovely, lovely dinner, and it was amazing.
It was awesome. No, it was great because you see the photo and you're like, oh, there's MJ and Joy are always together. And then you're like, oh, and there's Alex. There's you. And I'm like, Carmen. And then Cynthia and Colleen and all my favorites all together. And Aaron Coscarelli is one of my favorites as well. We were together on a show in 2015 called Fantasy and Friends, which to this day is one of the most enjoyable shows I was ever a part of. Dave Damashek was the host, MJD, Aaron Coscarelli, and me.
Wow, love that.
It was such a fun show, and MJD and I still talk about it to this day. A lot of the segments that you see on the NFL Network stemmed from Fantasy and Friends that people ripped off and took to other shows, and you see them on Total Access in Fantasy Live and all that stuff. But in any event, regardless, where can we find you though? Because obviously you do such a great job for Fox Sports. You cover the NFC North. Where are you? You're obviously in Chicago right now. Where are you going to be for the draft?
I will be at Hallis Hall. So
awesome. Oh, that's right. You said that last week. Yeah.
Yep. So on Thursday, I will be there on Thursday for the first round. And then I think I'm going to go back on Saturday after they wrap everything up and have the post draft in its entirety pressers and stuff like that. So yeah. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to get to be in Hallis Hall for the draft and hear from Ryan Poles right afterwards and Matt Eberflus. So it's been great.
That sounds amazing. So be sure to check that out on foxsports.com. So for everybody, once again, a reminder, Rip Beer Company in Huntington Beach, PCH location. We'll be having our draft party. We'll be doing a live hit after the Bears pick. And then, of course, I'll be on the Tape Never Lies network at some point, talking as probably a little bit more potty mouth because I try to keep it in control for Sammy here because I don't want to hurt his delicate ears. But for Carmen, I'm Adam. Enjoy the draft. We'll come after you next week. We're going to have a couple of big shows lined up for you. So until that time, bear down, and we'll catch you on the flip. And Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.